how do you find a specific text within this enormous quantity of Dunhuang manuscripts? Or how do you know if a text even exists in a Dunhuang manuscript? Where do you go? Where can you look this up? In a previous video, I've shown how to find Dunhuang manuscripts if you know the press mark. So you can use the press mark to search for the manuscript on sites such as IDP or Gallica. But here I would like to approach the problem from a different perspective. That is, what if you don't know the press mark, but you're looking for a specific text? So how do you find a text within the sea of Dunhuang manuscripts? So there are some obvious sources which are built into some of the websites, and let's look at these first. So first, let's look at the IDP website. As we've seen before, here the search function is primarily optimized for press marks, which means that you cannot input the title of the text because you will find nothing. But the website has this other feature called advanced search, and if you go there, you find a number of predefined or indexed values, and you can choose them to narrow your search. So one of these is the short title. If you click on that, you get this very long list of titles you can choose from. And as you can see, some of these are real titles, such as the Abhidharma Vibhasa Shastra. And next to the title, we also find the Taisho number, so we can identify the text very specifically. But then there are some other entries which are not really titles, such as account note or accounts of goods, and so forth. So these titles are more descriptive in nature, and they don't facilitate searching. And as you can see, most of these titles are actually in Sanskrit, so they refer to Buddhist texts, including scriptures and the Vinaya. And I do think that it's not ideal to have the Sanskrit titles here because the manuscripts are actually in Chinese and Tibetan, but mostly in Chinese. So you would have a Chinese title on the manuscript, or perhaps not even a title. So I think the titles themselves here should be in Chinese, and that would fit the corpus a little bit better. In any case, let's search for something specific. So let's say we're looking for the Lotus Sutra, and we know that the Sanskrit title of it is Sattharma Pundarika Sutra. And as you can see, just under that title, there are 3 different versions, depending on the translator. And if we don't know which one, we can actually select more than one item. So you hold down the Control key and then keep selecting additional items. So that's fine. And let's go with that. Let's submit and see what we get. And in this case, it's taking a little time, but eventually it should yield some results. Okay, and so here are the results that we get. And as you can see that there are quite a number of these manuscripts, and they come from different collections. So there are manuscripts from the British Library, from the National Library of China, from the Berlin Dunhuang collection, and so forth. Now, within this large quantity of hits, it can be quite difficult to find the one that you're actually looking for. And you get 30 pages of results. I think each page has 20 results. And if you go to the end, you don't get any more. And you may wonder whether this is because there are no more results, or because the maximum number of hits are set at this number. That means 600. And I think the answer is the second. So you may get many more results, especially with a popular sutra like this, but then the database doesn't show them to you, which is in a way unfortunate. But let's try to find another text which is not as popular as the Lotus Sutra. So let's go back to this short title search and then search for something like, I don't know, the Analects of Confucius. And if we select that, we can click submit. But let's remember that at the same time, we can also select things like archaeological site. And again, this is a little bit misleading because there are quite a number of sites here and you may not know which one you want to select. But for Dunhuang, you can just select Dunhuang Mogao, or better yet, not select anything, because You will probably not find many examples of this text at other sites, and if you do, then that's quite interesting in itself also. And you could select the language. So again, you don't need to worry about the language so much because we assume it's in Chinese, and if there is a copy in another language, you definitely want to know about that. So I would leave the language unchecked. But perhaps a quite useful feature is the Holding Institute. And there you can select the British Library, the British Museum, or the National Library of China, and so forth. And this can be quite useful if you want to limit your search to a specific institution. But we don't want to do that right now. So let's go with this. We select the Analects of Confucius, and then we hit Submit, and we'll see what happens. And this time the search was quite a bit faster, and we can see we get 23 results. Some of them are not digitized yet, but they're already in the database, so you find them easily. And then occasionally you find, say in this case, you have a Tibetan manuscript, and let's take a look at it because I'm curious why would they think there's an analect on it. And it is a fragment of Tibetan manuscript, and I don't see any Chinese on it. And I'm not sure if the Tibetan text is the analects, probably not, but most likely this is a false result, and so you have to discount this. In other cases you can find a text and you'll see that it is in fact the Analects of Confucius, and so this is a hit that you want to know about. Now the problem is that I know for a fact that there are more copies of the Analects of Confucius, and these are not found here. So that shows you that using this search method, you will not find everything in the database. This is a shame, but that's what we need to work with. So you have to find other ways to overcome this. Now if we go to Gallica, the digital library site of the National Library of France, then we can search for manuscripts in this search window. And say if you're interested in something like the Analects of Confucius, then you can type in Lunyu and search for it. And you will find 8 pages of hits. That's already more than what we found on the IDP site. But we can immediately see that some of these hits are duplicate copies of manuscripts already represented. It's because the microfilms have also been digitized. And so one manuscript would be usually represented as a recent photographed copy, which is color, and then you would have a digitized copy of the microfilm in black and white. So at least 2 entries per manuscript, and sometimes you have 3. Now if we go forward, let's say we go to page 5 of the 8 pages of search results, then we can see that there are also entries that are not from Dunhuang. So this 女四书几注, so the collected annotations to the female 4 books, is not a Dunhuang manuscript at all. It's not even from the medieval period. It's a much more recent copy from the Jiaqing period, and that's a printed book. It has nothing to do with Dunhuang. And the reason for that is that we did not limit our search. So we're searching the entire digital collection of the National Library of France. If we want to limit our search to Dunhuang manuscripts, we have to type in Paleo-Chinois. Or just probably Paleo, because maybe the Tibetan manuscripts would include something. And here, if we do that, we get fewer results, only 7 pages. But these will not include manuscripts that are not from Dunhuang. So this kind of search rides on the fact that many of the manuscripts have a description. So here in the about on the left-hand side, you have a description, and this, let's look at it bigger, and this description includes the word Lunyu, so includes the title of the text. And when you search, you're searching this entire catalog entry, and that's how you're finding it. But not all manuscript descriptions have the title of the text. Sometimes the title is not recognized, or sometimes the title is misrecognized. And so then you don't find it in the search. So what do you do then? And that requires us to do something else. And basically both the IDP website and Gallica, that is the BNF website, is limited in a sense that the results will not be complete. So they can help you find a text, but they will not be able to find you all the manuscripts with that text. And so you have to find other ways to track your text. And one of the ways to do that is to look in catalogs. So one of the most useful catalogs is this one. It's called Dunhuang Yishu Zongmu Soyin Xinbian. So it's a new edition of the index to the Dunhuang collections. It was done by the Dunhuang Yanjiuyuan, so the Dunhuang Academy. This new edition was done in 2000, and so it's already 20 years old. But nevertheless, it's still very, very useful. And if we look at the table of contents, we can see that first comes the Stein collection, called Inventory of Scriptures Stolen by Stein, and then comes the Paleo collection, also labeled as the manuscripts stolen by Paleo, and then the collection of the National Library of China, and there are different ways of accessing them. And so if you look at the Stein collection, they basically go by Stein numbers, and the Stein numbers are actually changed a little bit because instead of S1, which is the actual Stein number, they added an extra number of zeros, so each number is a 4-digit number, and it becomes more like a database. But by doing that, they actually changed the number, which is, again, not ideal. And obviously, because it's organized according to the press mark, you cannot easily find a text here. So what you need to do is go to the back of the book and use the index there. And there is a title index, which is called index, and it's according to titles, where you can find the press mark of a manuscript according to the title. So if you're looking for the Yi Qie Jing Yin Yi, which is one of the Buddhist dictionaries, then you can see that there are 3 manuscripts with this text. One is in the Stein collection and 2 in the Paleo collection. And using the press marks, you can go back to the body of this catalog and find some more information about the manuscript there. But actually, for our purposes, what we really need is already here. So if we do research on the Yi Qie Jing Yin Yi, we will find that these 3 manuscripts contain that text. This catalog is quite thorough and reliable, so I would definitely advocate using it. It takes a little time to get used to it, so this index is using stroke number, and as you can see, you start with the 1-stroke characters like E and Yi, and then you go to 2-stroke characters like R and Shi and so forth. So this is how you find the manuscripts, and it's very, very useful. But it's a little bit out of date. But fortunately, we also have something even better for Buddhist manuscripts, and that is this catalog that was published by the Library of the International College for Postgraduate Buddhist Studies. And the version I'm using is the 3rd provisional edition, which you can download for free from the web. And this is a concordance to the Taisho canon and Dunhuang Buddhist manuscripts. So basically the focus is on texts that are part of the Buddhist canon, which includes the vast majority of Buddhist texts. But the catalog is not concerned with other texts which are secular in nature, as the Analects of Confucius or many other kinds of texts. The focus is on Buddhist texts. But that is not necessarily a serious limitation, because most of the manuscripts from Dunhuang actually contain Buddhist texts. Maybe around 90% of everything discovered in Dunhuang is Buddhist texts. So even though this is limited only to Buddhist texts, that means it covers almost the entire collection. And within the domain of Buddhist texts, this is a very thorough inventory. So it's very reliable, it's searchable, it's perfect. So let's say I'm looking for a text I know only occurs in Dunhuang, and say that is the Xin Pu Sa Jing. I simply use the search function of the PDF reader, and then I immediately find a number of hits. So this is what we see, Xin Pu Sa Jing Yi Juan. This is a tiny text which was included in the Taisho canon based on a Dunhuang copy And as you can see, here are like 36 copies of the text, and I think if we go to the next page, we can see a few more. And another version marked with B occurs in a single manuscript. And these numbers are the exact location within the Taisho canon, saying how much of the text survives in that particular manuscript, which is also very useful. So if I wanted to look at what this manuscript looks like, then I would have to type in the press mark. So let's say we go with the first one, which is Paleo Chinois 3857. And the 2 means that it's the second text on that manuscript. So 3857. Let's go to IDP. We type S for, that's the last bit of Chinois, and then what was it? 3857. 3857. And we find the manuscript here. And to see it better, we open it in a new tab. We can even zoom in a little bit. And as you can see, the text begins here. So there's a text that comes before it, and it's not the Xinpu Saijing. But the Xinpu Saijing begins here, and it ends here. So that's how you find a manuscript. And I think this is the best way of finding texts within the Dunhuang corpus. And of course, other than this, you should always do a Google search and then find articles written about specific texts in Dunhuang, and you may be able to find several other manuscripts which have that text. But on the whole, I think you can use this Taisho concordance to find the texts within the manuscripts. Please put in the comments if you know any other ways of finding specific texts within the manuscripts. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.